So me and my wife went to go see the movie, The Book of Clarence. Now, of course, I had my own judgments or pre-assumptions of this movie. But once I started to watch it, I was realizing, this is a pretty decent film as far as the characters, and because we all know the characters of the Bible are largely what, Negroes. The scholars know this, and the real people who study history know this. So it was a real interesting film, um, comical at best, but also just the fact that even the antagonist, which is Clarence, he makes some real interesting statements in the film about the conceptions of what people perceived as the birth of Jesus Christ, or Yahweh, the Immaculate Conception. Judas is in the movie as well, and so forth. But, I would recommend people reading the book by Mr. Rudolph R. Windsor, Judah Trembles Under Rome, because in that time there were many messiahs, or quote unquote false messiahs. So now we're going to be looking at this book, Judea Trembles Under Rome by Rudolph R. Windsor. The untold details of the Greek and Roman military domination of ancient Palestine during the time of Jesus, or Yahweh of Galilee. Now there's a real interesting scene in the movie where they clean up this old homeless Caucasian fellow, and he resembles Jesus Christ, okay? And they're all mesmerized by his beauty, his appearance. But also to take in consideration, this actor is the same person that plays Doctor Strange, which is a warlock or a witch. The irony of that, right? So in the the Marvel universe, he plays a warlock. In biblical times, he plays a false messiah, okay? The deceiver, right? So now we're on page 134. What was the motive for the cover-up? The motive, no doubt, was to change the true militant Jesus, or Yahweh, a fighter against the Romans, to a passive, docile one, and to present the Romans in the Gospels and the military occupation of the Holy Land as an innocent one with a low profile. With this accomplished, Paul and the Romans decided to blame the Judeans for the deaths of Jesus. Paul, who opposed James, the brother of Jesus, in the book of Acts, decided to go and preach to the Gentiles within the Roman Empire. Also, Paul knew that if he had taught that the Romans oppressed and killed Jesus and the Judeans, he would have been convicted and executed for stirring up trouble within the Roman Empire. Paul's preaching and teaching combined Judaism with paganism, and the result was called Christianity. The earlier followers of Jesus in Jerusalem didn't call themselves Christians, but Nazarenes, meaning keepers of the covenant, which means the keepers of the law. The Hebrew word for keepers in plural form is Nozrim. The Gentile followers of Paul in Antioch, Syria, were called Christians, Acts 11:26. Hebrew Christians, right? But the apostles and disciples which followed Jesus never called themselves Christians. The Roman Empire in the early 4th century was in religious conflict and turmoil. There were 4 major religions or ideologies: paganism, Gnosticism, Christianity, and Judaism. At this time, the Roman Empire covered all the Mediterranean countries of Africa and the Middle East, quote unquote, Turkey, called Asia, and Europe and beyond. So now we're at the final plan of Jesus, and it states, the disciples wrote that Jesus went to Jerusalem to die for the sins of the world. Now, most religious sects, people believe this. This is the story of the fictitious Jesus. The true Judean Jesus made preparations to fight the Romans and their flunkies, and there are clues in various places scattered throughout the Gospels. Here's what Jesus said to his disciples just before he went to Jerusalem. And he that has no sword, let him sell his garments and buy one. Luke 22:36-38, Matthew 10:34, Mark 14:47. Reading on, the true militant Jesus tells his disciples who don't have swords to buy them. This is opposite to what the fictitious Jesus said. And unto him that smite on the one cheek offer also the other. Luke 6:29. If Jesus or Yahushua has a lot of miraculous powers from God, why does he need to tell his disciples to buy swords? However, if he is just an ordinary man, and then it is somewhat understandable, it is evident that Jesus was planning a secret undertaking on a grand scale, which later gospel editors watered down and excluded. What was the big necessity or emergency that prompted the true Jesus to instruct his disciples to sell their precious garments and buy swords? Obviously, he felt that they needed swords to defend themselves. Remember, Jesus recently committed an act of disorderly conduct when he turned over the tables of the money changers in the temple, Luke 19:45. This act has the color and smell of a riot, and naturally, and he would be wanted by the police of the high priest and by the Romans. Earlier, Jesus said, I came not to bring peace, but a sword, Matthew 10:34. So right here we have a side-by-side of Benedict Cumberbatch, and we all know him as Doctor Strange. But in the movie Book of Clarence, he plays the fictitious Jesus, or the Caucasian, so-called white Jesus who the world venerates, the globalist. So now we're in the book of 1 Maccabees, chapter 3. We're going to start at verse 46. Therefore the Israelites assembled themselves together and came to Maspah over against Jerusalem. For in Maspah was the place where they prayed aforetime in Israel. Then they fasted that day and put on sackcloth and cast ashes upon their heads and rent their clothes, and laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images. Now, we've all seen the show Good Times, the specific episode of Black, quote unquote, Black Jesus. But when he states that the lost tribes of Israel were so-called black, okay? Now, the writers know the true history of Judea and who the so-called black man represents in biblical times. But, through brainwashing, miseducation, misinformation, the world venerates this Caucasian or so-called white Jesus. So that's the game. Now we're back in the book, Judea Trembles Under Rome. The real Jesus, or Yahushua, who fought against the Romans, believed in Hebrew nationalism. Okay, he was not a globalist figure as religions depict him as. He specifically told the 12 disciples, go not into the way of the Gentiles and into any of the cities of the Samaritans, non-Judeans residing in central Palestine, enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 10:5-6. The above statement of Jesus or Yahushua is pregnated with nationalism. The Webster's Dictionary defines nationalism as loyalty and devotion to your nation. So you have to ask the so-called black man of the Americas, what is your nation? What is your culture? What is your heritage? What is your language, etc.? Black is a color or crayon. It doesn't represent history. We are more of boxwood, copper, bronze, swarthy, tawny, etc. Reading on, possessing a sense of national consciousness and exalting the nation above all others and placing primary emphasis on the promotion of its culture and interest. This definition of nationalism describes the real Jesus or Yahushua to a T. That's why they had to give you a fictitious or love everyone, docile Jesus Christ. Reading on, at another place, Jesus said, salvation is of the Jews, meaning what? The Judeans of the southern kingdom, right? John 4:22. No doubt, Jesus or Yahushua, being a Judean, adopted this saying from Zechariah 9:23 and 9:9. After Jesus or Yahushua told his disciples to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel, and in the next verse, he has instructed his disciples, go preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. As I have shown, the kingdom of heaven is the righteous kingdom of the Most High, which the Essenes, John, and Jesus intended to establish in Jerusalem, not in a celestial sphere place, right? It is obvious that the phrase kingdom of heaven became a slogan of national liberation to rally the Judean people against Roman colonialism. This line of logic keeps Jesus or Yahushua within his historical context. We'll end this video, or part one, on this note. the cross does not represent something of enlightenment.